Hey everyone, welcome to the podcast. Today we're going to have a riveting conversation. I'm the host today, Henry, and I'm visited by Gwen and Cleo. Now, a little bit on our guests. So, Cleo, she's been to every country in the world at least 5 times. She has friends in very high places, so just don't get on her bad side. She inspired the song Gotta Be You by One Direction. And she walks at least 3,000 miles every single day. So, our next guest is Gwen. Gwen has successfully rescued 60 sea turtles from net tangles. And just like not planned, just casually swimming and, sees a turtle and helps it out. Despite thousands of years of humans wearing sandals, Gwen is the first person to make sandal tans cool. Now, her dreams are the only dreams that can't be caught by a dream catcher. So now that you guys are acquainted with our guests, we're going to get into it. And they don't know what we're talking about today. I kind of just invited them here, tried to wine and dine them, and just hit record on the camera. But today, we are talking about the mystery of Bigfoot.
Oh, yes.
Oh, wow.
So I invited these experts in.
One of the biggest mysteries of all, really. Oh.
One I know intimately.
Really?
Wow.
Oh, I can't wait to get into
I'm
that.
excited to hear about that
Okay.
encounter.
So we're going to start out.
Yep.
And for those of you listening, we'll explain what we're doing. But, we have a camera going. I'm handing Gwen a piece of paper.
Thank you.
And I'm handing
Henry.
Cleo a piece of paper. Now, here, take these.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
So, I want you guys to write on here, on a scale of 1 to 10, what you guys think of this whole Bigfoot thing. 1 meaning it's all a hoax. Every single thing of Bigfoot is fake. 10 being that it's as real as a great white shark, but you're likely never to come across it. Right? So, write that down. Don't conceal it. Do conceal it. Don't show. Write that down. Okay, you guys ready?
Yeah.
Okay, so starting with Cleo, what did you write down?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
8.5.
8.5
Yeah.
out of 10.
Out of 10.
Okay, so explain your position.
I feel like there's enough personal encounters and enough evidence to give that the 8.5, but the reason it's not a full 10 is because the biggest reason why it can't be scientifically proven, never found a body of a Bigfoot.
Oh, so that's kind of what is holding you up.
Yeah.
Okay. Gwen?
All right. I actually put a 6.
Wow.
We have lots of debate here. For some of the same reasons. I think there's a lot of personal encounters. But people have a lot of personal encounters with things that may or may not be real. But then on the other side is that, I think the science behind it, there's pros and cons to that science. And if,
Sure.
Bigfoot's real or not.
No, I agree. And I'm putting you guys on the spot, so I appreciate you guys' answers. But really, I think about this, and I'm honestly probably at a 7 with all this stuff. And I get where you're coming from, and you might, don't worry. But I'm kind of at a 7 because it's I'm more confident that there's just something out there. And we get bits and pieces and fragments of what might be out there. But I don't want to fall into the trap and think of and have a concrete idea of what Bigfoot already is before we find out more. Now, if you ask me, is there something out there that we don't know? I'm at a 9.6. I'm up there. I'm really up there.
I can agree with that. I can
Yeah, me
definitely
too.
agree with that.
So anyway, I put you guys on the spot without that explanation. Just, so what do you guys think of normal cryptids?
What?
Do you know what a cryptid is?
No.
Yeah, explain that.
A cryptid, the definition is an animal that has been claimed to exist, but never proven to exist. Contrary to popular belief, cryptids don't have any supernatural or mythical or even and they're not even all that strange. Sorry, this is actually a definition I pulled off the internet.
Oh, nice.
But the grammar is a little off, I guess. So, so they're not necessarily mythical. They don't have supernatural powers, and they may not even be all that strange. But many popular creatures acquire these characteristics as their legends grow. So a cryptid, that's a cryptid, just something that we don't know. So where are you guys at on other cryptids? Granted, some like pretty fantastic things like fairies,
Unicorns.
I don't know if those count because those are like more mythology. I don't think anyone.
Okay, so
Yeah.
nobody's actually
Leprechauns.
believing that's okay. Leprechauns.
Does that count?
I don't think leprechauns are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I want to
That's
be
like a
like,
small-
no,
that's
that's
like-
so dumb. But
That's a little, yeah.
Yeah.
That's folklore more.
That's folklore, yeah.
I guess.
But that's kind of what I'm going to get into as well, is that we're from, the Northwest region of the United States. So Bigfoot is part of almost like pop culture, or like our cultural background here a little bit more. So I want to be like, oh, fairies are so dumb, or leprechauns are so dumb. But someone, where that's part of their culture more might hear that and be like, no, that's how we think of Bigfoot. So
Yeah,
anyway,
I can agree with that too.
okay, but just like strange sightings, UFOs, stuff like what do you got? Where are you guys generally at on that? And you don't have to put on a scale.
Yeah, I feel like with all those things, it's kind of tough because when let's take UFOs, you see something in the sky, it's unidentifiable.
Yeah,
Don't know what it is.
could be
Flying
just like
object.
a helium balloon.
Yeah, right.
From the grocery store.
But the thing is, I felt that's hard with that is that if I experience that, I see something in the sky, it looks like a UFO, I think it's a UFO, but it's only my sighting, my personal experience, and then I go and tell other people. I think it's hard same with Bigfoot, people are having really personal encounters with Bigfoot, but that's as far as it goes in a lot of these cases where it's like, I had this personal experience, but it's just that person saying that thing, which doesn't make it any more true or any less true in my mind.
Yeah.
Right. So same with like a UFO. If it was just me, that saw it, how accurate could that be? Because there's a lot of factors that could come in with my personal account. So
Yeah. I think it's kind of what you said at the beginning. Like, I definitely think there's things out there that's just like we don't really know about and that haven't really truly been discovered. So that's just kind of, I think, aligns with what a cryptid is.
yeah.
Oh yeah, totally. So it's really interesting. You guys are very open-minded, obviously. But I even kind of veered away from this idea of Sasquatch until like a few years ago. I just started listening to stories. So I have, I work like doing research, right? That's kind of like, that's my job. And anecdotal evidence, meaning like a story or someone's experience, is the worst evidence. But it's still evidence.
Yeah.
You know, that's why they give testimonials in court. And even though it's like, it could be like way off the rails, it's still evidence. It's just, kind of the worst evidence.
Yeah.
However, when you have people who don't know each other or don't know about this, this whole Bigfoot stuff, and then they come and say, hey, I had this experience and then this happened and this, and they hit all these check marks, one starts to wonder like, wow, this is actually really interesting. How would they know to bring this stuff up? And people are crafty, but I don't like, there are three options with these. If someone comes and tells you a Bigfoot story, they're either straight up lying, they're crazy and think that it happened, or someone hoaxed them or something like that, or it actually happened. So, and I was really actually kind of blown away at how many people come forward and how many like eyewitness accounts are come forward in a year. It just in a time period, and from every single state in America, which is strange, right? Really except Hawaii, I gotta say.
Yeah.
But yeah. So hearing these eyewitness accounts and how I don't know, just how okay, for example, they can be so specific on the details. Sometimes someone will say, oh, I saw something brown and I looked and it was walking across the field, swinging its arms. It's like, okay, that's compelling. Like, how did that something that big is walking around, But when someone says an experience and they say, I just got this chill down my back and this enormous thing as wide as a door started walking, and they have this face-to-face experience where they can explain which teeth were sharp, which teeth were flat, what the hair pattern was, how the lips were, what the nose was like. Like, So anytime anyone says, oh, they're misidentifying it with a bear, it's like, yeah, no, they're not describing a bear at all, you know? So
Yeah, it's not like a blur in the woods that they're like, wow, that could have been,
yeah,
that could have been Bigfoot. But it's like, oh no, I saw this directly and I'm able to describe it.
yeah, exactly. So, this is something that I bring up occasionally with people. And I think one thing that people, where they get hung up is they're like, just think that civilization and people are just everywhere, right? And so there's no way that there could be a creature existing. And I'm just going to say, if there's one, there are several.
Yeah,
right?
That's accurate. I agree with that.
Yeah. And unless you think that it's some kind of like paranormal apparition or whatever, but like we'll get into, I'll bring that up a little bit later. But I want to tell a quick story.
Okay.
I have a friend who is an avid hiker. And he would, every single weekend, he goes on these big, long hikes. And he does it so much that he has a GPS that he carries with him. And it has a button on it that if he presses the button, his family will be alerted. The police and fire department will be alerted with his GPS location.
Got it.
And he told me that one time he went on this hike that was a 15-mile loop. And it was with him and another guy. And they were doing the 15-mile loop. At the beginning, like in the parking lot, as he's putting on the backpack, he accidentally hit the button, and he started going on he just like took off. Mm-hmm. The police went out, the fire department went out, his family was alerted. They had his GPS location, and by the time they actually found him, he had finished the loop.
Oh wow!
Like and so
how many hours was that?
I don't know. He's probably fast, but just 15 miles.
miles.
Did a 15-mile loop, so it was several hours.
Yeah.
So you think that, and it's like we really overestimate our ability to find something in the wilderness. Heat signatures can be concealed by 2 trees. You know, and how often are there 2 trees like just covering, you know, and I'm talking about like the leaves or pines or pine needles or whatever. So it's really strange. Finding people, there are so many times where people just aren't found, even with a dog, which, you know, obviously I love dogs. I'm big into dogs. And so like, it's hard to say that sometimes dogs won't be able to find, but, you know, they're just going off scent. Or, I don't know. It's just, I think we really overestimate our ability to find stuff in the woods. And that's kind of what people say, like, oh, all the trail cams, all the people who are out there. So that's something to consider. And funny enough, I asked him if he believed in Bigfoot, and he was like, no, that's so dumb. And I was like, okay.
You're like, well, yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, that's fine. But yeah, so that's just kind of an interesting thing. I remember that I moved to Oregon when I was 8 years old, and it was kind of like a joke. I was like, oh, like I would make prints in the snow outside and be like, look, Mom, like Bigfoot came back. I got memories of us doing that, like in snow or whatever. And then there's a specific time in middle school, actually. It was a snowy day. There were like clouds coming over the mountains and everything. And our substitute teacher was just like, didn't have many assignments and for us to do that day. And so he, yeah, you know how that goes. Mm-hmm. But he was just looking out the window, and he's like, actually, now that I think about it, this is like quite mystic of him to do. He's like looking out, and he's like, have you guys ever heard about Sasquatch? And I was like, and we were like,
look like Sasquatch?
No, it's just a regular. But he was like, what did it look like? My substitute was Sasquatch.
That is how I began to believe in Bigfoot when he was teaching my class.
You're like explaining your teacher. This big guy,
beard,
really hairy,
the hair on underneath his eyes.
I look up and I'm just like, whoa!
Whoa.
I thought I was doing my math. That's so funny. No, he's just, you know, he turns around and is like, have you guys ever heard? And a lot of the people were like, oh, like we know people who have said, or, you know, had their own experiences or whatever. And then he told us an experience. He said that he used to meet up with friends every Saturday to play at this community center. They play basketball. And it was a snowy day, just like it was that day for us. And he said that they were waiting for this friend. He's normally there all the time, every Saturday. But he was late, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 15 minutes. 20, 30 minutes late. It just like went on. And they're like, okay, we got to go drive and make sure that he's okay. Maybe he slipped on the roads. And as they did, they said he pulled in that parking lot and he was just like white as a ghost. And they went up there like, hey man, you're so late. What happened? And they're like, we can go back in and play basketball. He's like, I don't want to. And they're like, well, what happened? He's like, can one of you guys like go home, like take me home? And they're just so confused. And they eventually coaxed it out of him. And he said, hey, I was driving down the road and there was something in the middle of the road. And I swerved and I saw this enormous, like, hairy man. And he stepped on my car and went up the hill. And they're like, are you kidding me? They're like, and this was in Oregon. This is like Bigfoot Mecca, right? So I was like, they're like, oh. So they go and they jump in the cars and they go to see, where this all happened. And sure enough, there were like skids from his tires, like no one else had been. And they saw enormous tracks in the snow, like big barefoot tracks in the snow, go up the mountain. And this guy, our teacher was just telling us this. And so I was just like, I think that was a moment where it clicked, like, holy cow, like this might actually be something that's significant. And, from there, I've always been very interested in it and just like gathered information little by little. But that's kind of when it all like
clicked.
Yeah, it kind of all clicked, like, oh, this might actually be real. Did you ever have an experience with someone telling a story?
I think I remember you telling this story, and then your obsession afterwards. Probably.
Loose, means that term very loosely.
Yeah, the obsession.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I think to do with that, when you're in Oregon and you're like in the woods and you're walking and the trees are creaking and it's just like you're deep in the forest, like you can't help but feeling like there's something else out here. And I think anyone that's like spent enough time in the forest like feels that way. And so I think like growing up there, I kind of always had that feeling whenever I was there. And so I think that's like really what kind of swayed that Bigfoot theory for me anyways.
Yeah, and I feel like proximity to people, either like the actual country where, or like part of the country where Bigfoot, resides is part of it. And also just the proximity to people that have had sightings of Bigfoot. I feel like those two things together bring up like the reality of like, yeah, this is actually could be a real thing. I think when you're maybe not so close to those parts, it's harder to believe and to conceive that like, when you don't know anybody who's ever had an encounter, or people that don't go into the woods and don't kind of feel that like, oh, man, really, this is so like vast of a a forest that anything could be hiding out here for who knows how long.
Well, I think something else that swayed me is because when you do talk to people and you say, oh, Bigfoot, I feel like some people have stories. They're like, oh, well, I knew someone, or I knew someone, or at least like back, like I remember one time my grandparents telling me that they thought that they had a Bigfoot encounter when I was younger, and I think like I took everything they said to like heart, and so for them to say it wasn't like a huge encounter, it was just similar. They just said they felt like they were being watched like in the woods. So I mean, that's not to say that that's Bigfoot or anything, but still, them kind of being like having a similar thing, I think that definitely all the stories, especially people close to you that you trust and believe, is like what makes you believe more.
So, Gwen, you grew up in Idaho.
Yeah.
Would you say like a more rural part? Would you say?
Yeah, I would say more rural. A lot of
but you're really close to Yellowstone.
Yes.
So it's definitely. Did anyone ever bring it up in a serious manner? What was like the tone of it?
So I feel like you got two different types of people. So you had some that were, I feel like, probably the people that actually have seen Bigfoot, right? The ones that were like, this is my encounter. I was out, hiking in the Tetons, and this is the things I felt, the things I saw. And then you would get people that kind of took that to like more of a, I would say serious, but more of like the putting things that aren't there. Yeah. I once talked to this man who came in and he was telling me about Bigfoot, and he said he had seen...
Well, clarify. So you were working...
Oh, sorry. Yes. Yeah. I was working in, Jackson Hole, which is right near the Grand Teton National Forest. So out there, it's just tons of forest out there that are, we always tell people to bring bear spray. We always tell people to make sure they're very like knowledgeable out in the woods, because you can easily get lost. It's just like, it's incredible. So I was working out there, and a man came in, and we were talking about, so he was talking about how he had seen 6, I'm not sure what the plural term is, 6 Bigfoots.
Yes.
Big feet. I'm not sure, actually. He had seen 6 on the way over from the Teton
Seeing
National...
6 is a big feat.
It's a
Good.
big
Like,
feat.
it's a really big feat.
6 big feet.
Most people only see 1.
Yeah, but it's a big feat to see so many feet. No, but he had seen 6 just standing on the side of the road, basically, was his encounter. And then he was talking about how, which from my understanding is actually pretty common with people that interact with Bigfoot, is that they communicate, like, basically in their minds, kind of.
Oh, we'll get into that.
Yeah, so he has said that was kind of, but he could basically talk to them wherever they were at. And he was telling me that they told me that they would protect me. The big Bruce and Wayne were the names that he had names. So Bruce and Wayne, very similar to Bruce Wayne. Now that I say that, it was a little, but he was adamant, and he did show me some videos.
Well, I mean, in his defense, those can't be their real names, so he's giving him maybe, even if they're the first names that popped into his head, it doesn't prove or disprove like his.
Yeah, he did say that's what they told them.
Oh, okay. Okay. So
here's the thing.
Maybe they're DC fans.
Gotham City was in trouble. But here's my point.
We know Bigfoot's more DC than Marvel now. So.
Yeah, it is more of a DC thing. But the point is, I feel like if you have... So for me, it was just too unbelievable, his story. But I think if you have 1 or 2 of those, it persuades a lot of people that, like, oh, I had this encounter with this one person that it just seems so improbable that he saw 6 driving, 10 miles down the road. So it's like, I really can't conceive that any of it is real. But then, so I feel like if you can have a few of those, mixed in with you haven't had any encounters, it dissuades people that it's real. But then if you have encounters with, like Cleo said, of, like, people you trust and that you are familiar in the woods, like, you've experienced things like that, then it's like, yeah, this really, this could be real. Yeah,
and we've got to also point out that it's so taboo to bring this up. How many people are like having encounters that just don't talk about it, which would be really helpful if everyone was like, if there's a place where you could safely report or whatever.
Yeah.
But I always think it'd be so funny if you could sit down and have a conversation with Bigfoot and trying to explain to them that we're still debating whether they exist or not. It'd be like, bro, I've been seen so many times.
He's like, I've been trying to get seen.
It's like, bro, I've been hit by a car.
Yeah, I've been hit by cars. They made a movie about me. Like,
movies.
You don't see Harrison.
Bruce Wayne.
Just look up my name on YouTube.
Can you see my name? Wow, how much more fame can you
Yeah.
get before people start believing that you're real?
No, I just think it's so funny though. But like, really though, it's quite interesting how many people see it, and like you said, like we're gonna get into details of things that make it a very unique Sasquatch encounter. We're gonna get into that. But first, I wanted to show you guys. I mean, we're talking about just kind of like the size of everything. There's this website called thetruesize.com, and pretty much you can I'll show you guys. You can look up, and you guys can react to this. So what we're looking at is a map of the world. You type in a state or you type in a country, and you can drag it around and see how big, because like a sphere, it kind of throws off the size of stuff. So this is kind of showing even if we just look at the size of Alaska, I mean, that's enormous.
Insane. That's like half of the United States.
Like the peninsula, it's like you've got it up on Maine and the peninsula, which I don't know what that peninsula is called. And like, I think it's called like Prince Wales or something. Anyway, but that peninsula is straight up cutting right through Orlando. I mean, that's enormous. So you think that that's also one of our least populated states, especially compared to size. When you bring it over here, it is the entire San Diego to Seattle. It's enormous. And the width, I mean, and we're looking here and we won't spend too much time on this because we can get into a lot of geography that's pretty interesting. But you think Idaho, Montana, Oregon, Washington, British Columbia, and Alaska. Those are the hot spots, right? Kind of where if you pull that and compare it to the rest of the world, I mean, let's look at Alaska alone is like huge to China. It and even Russia, it's huge to these places that we think of just as enormous parts of the world. So you take Alaska, British Columbia, and those states. I mean, and we can add California in there too, and Nevada, and Utah. There are a lot of things that happen in Utah. We're in Utah, by the way. Yeah. And anyway, so that's just interesting. I mean, the thousands of viewers that are going to see this don't know where we are
Yeah.
until. Well, I just said
We're
where
in
we
Utah,
are.
okay?
Utah.
So, something to consider. Now, I don't want, and there are lots of people in Florida and Ohio and like all over the U.S. and all over the world, really, that are having encounters too. So I don't want to rule you guys out, but anyway. Okay, so let's talk about what Bigfoot probably is and what he probably isn't. There are essentially two classes of people, and I think that like, okay, so here are the two classes. Bigfoot is just a Neanderthal type thing, or a great ape that walks on two legs, or Bigfoot is like straight up magical, like an alien or something.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so they're the two groups of people, two groups of thought. So, I heard someone explaining, this is actually really funny. They're like, okay, first you have to accept Bigfoot is real. Then you have to accept that aliens are real. And then it actually makes a lot of sense that they're working together on stuff. But you first have to accept
Yeah,
that there's two.
one to the other and then back
Oh
to
my
the
gosh.
other.
I've heard this. Okay, there's this story of this guy who kept having UFO visits on his property. And he was like, there were these glowing balls are always, I don't know if you guys know this, but glowing
Yeah.
balls are always associated with Sasquatch sightings, right?
Oh,
I
actually,
didn't
no,
know
I was
that.
thinking aliens.
Yeah, me
No,
too.
Sasquatch. Yeah.
Interesting.
I have something interesting to tell you guys about that later. Just remind me. But so this guy on his property had glowing orbs and had like UFOs in his very rural place. And like on like a megaphone over his house, it said like, in 7 days, we're going to burn your house, like coming from the sky. And he was like, my gosh. And so, but one day he saw, like, he said, what do I do? But like the seventh day came and nothing happened. And then he saw a light out there and he was just like, I had to force every step, but I went out to that light and I went out there and two like gray, bald, no offense to bald people, but like bald, like aliens. Okay, alien, like gray looking alien people were standing out there in like
Humanoids,
tinfoil, like
as they say.
sweatsuits kind of stuff.
Is this the plot of The Arrivals?
No. Oh my gosh.
Wait a second.
I'm a little too familiar.
There's a girl who like really studied like languages. That was his wife, and then there was a scientist. And
Somebody died. I can't remember.
And then she asked, "Are there two people speaking?" I'm just okay. So he goes out there, and there's like this glowing orb, and then he sees these two aliens, and it's like in a clearing, and he sees the aliens. They're like, "Oh, we decided to not blow up your house," and he's like, "What?" He's like, "Okay, thanks. What's going on? And what is that light?" He couldn't stop looking at that light, and then all of a sudden they said, "Don't go to," like he wanted to go check out the light, and they said, "Don't go to it," and he's like, "Well, why?" And they like turn to the woods and say, "You can come out now." A Sasquatch walks out of the woods.
What? Where did you hear this story?
Just let me get through.
I think I need the sources.
Sasquatch walks out of the
It's a
woods.
lot to swallow.
And-
Maybe I haven't swallowed the alien theory yet.
Yeah, that's
or maybe it's
true.
Sasquatch. One of the two, because this is getting too much for me.
Okay, listen. It walks out of the woods and stops. And then they like nod, and then it was like like bends, like, 'cause it can't,
Like
and then
bows?
It turns over and walks and just like touches the orb and is like and gets shocked and like fall over, dies. And he
dies?
said he could like smell it, the smoke.
Wait, what?
And then he said, whoa, why did you do that? Like, you could just told me it was dangerous. And they're like, now you'll remember it's dangerous.
Like he's
And then-
gonna encounter it
Yeah,
again.
yeah.
Like, you're gonna be. We thought that you might not believe us when we told you.
Yeah. He's like, well, now you know it's dangerous. And
We
then,
should just sacrifice the
Yeah, it was
Sasquatch.
like so-
We have plenty of those.
Yeah, I'm like, are they on the same side?
Yeah, I'm confused. Are they enemies? I don't know.
no, they're
Like a
just
moth
like
to
some.
a flame.
Okay, I've actually heard.
Sasquatches love this.
I just like the image of like Sasha. You can come out now. Walks out, and they like nod, and he's like, oh. So, yeah, it's just like
chosen.
He's
He's
been
been his
chosen.
whole life
He's
for
like-
that moment.
just like
I
falls
know.
over.
It's like the whole clan of the Sasquatch are like, bless the, the chosen to touch the light. Touch the light.
So this
God.
random guy will not go again.
I just feel like there's more people than Sasquatch, so we should probably be calling the people.
For sure,
Yeah,
yeah.
Sasquatch. We don't
They
know a
should
lot of
be.
us, but maybe I'm wrong.
They should have the
What
farmer
happens-
touch it so the Sasquatch knows.
Yeah,
that
so
he
the
can't
Sasquatch
touch it.
knows.
I mean, what did he do with the body?
That's another.
I don't know. That's a good point. I don't remember that detail.
The aliens probably took it. But
Okay.
again, one of the others, I don't know if it's Sasquatch or if it's the aliens, but
Yeah. So pretty much, there's some weird.
stuff going on?
That story.
No. Okay, there are a lot of stories like that. Like, no joke. There are.
Wow.
Yeah, like, obviously those are the more fringe ones, but they're, like, this person had a good point that you got to accept one, that both exist, and then there actually makes a lot of sense, a lot of
It
this
does.
stuff.
Do you believe in aliens, Cleo? Are you an alien believer? Because I'm
I
trying to
don't
get
know.
the judge. Like, you believe so strongly in Sasquatch, but
Yeah.
aliens are not on your list.
Especially
think
from
just-
Oregon. If she,
Yeah,
like,
I think
if
it's
you've
just
ever
such a
lived in
part of, like,
space,
my
you would.
upgrade.
Yeah, if you had lived in
let me-
high mountains, but like,
Yeah, let me
Close enough.
experience a little bit of the world of space, and I'll go back to you.
Yeah, well, you've already visited enough of this world. You'll probably have kids that are born in, like, the Mars colonies, and they'll be all about.
Yeah.
They could let me know.
Yeah.
see, I feel like I'm more, I feel like the
The
reality of
alien.
aliens
Yeah.
than how much did they have here? Probably not. I don't think they have a lot of influence here, but Sasquatch,
Yeah.
on the other hand,
Yeah.
obviously, is
Guys,
here.
Yeah.
I ask people if they have Sasquatch experiences, and I ask people if they have, like, UFO experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Almost everyone I ask has a weird UFO experience. And I'll say, like, well, what?
Oh, what's your circle of people?
Yeah,
No, I just ask
know.
people.
Yeah, maybe
I just...
I need to start
Maybe
bringing
that's
this
my
up.
thing. Is I gotta start asking.
No, yeah, you got to ask.
'Cause
And
nobody's
I
gonna bring it up
promise
at
you
a
will get a
party.
better response from out of UFOs. And I'll be like, well, what did you see? And they're like, I saw a green illuminated triangle in the middle of the sky that wasn't moving. And I went and got my dad, and I said, hey, Dad, do you see that? And he said, yes. And we watched for 30 minutes, and it just, like,
Blinked out of
slowly...
existence.
No, it just kind of, like, faded out and left.
Interesting.
Like, here, that was a guy here in Utah. We were just hanging out, and he was just like... I'm telling you guys, ask people. You'll get a much more positive response asking about that.
It's a good icebreaker.
Yeah,
It's
I was
good,
just
actually,
gonna say,
yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
now I'll add that into my dating life.
Yeah.
So first question,
First
hey,
date.
so seeing
we
anything
gotta
unidentified?
clear- we
I'm going to hand you a piece of paper on a scale of
On a
1 to
scale of
10.
10. Do you believe in
Let me
Sasquatch
know.
or aliens or aliens?
All right, so those are the two...
Working
And
together.
man.
Those are the
Certain
two
conspiracy.
like ideas that people have of Sasquatch, and some are more like mystical, like, okay, they can transport, or they can I don't know, and some it's hard to identify, because if I say someone thinks that the ability to turn invisible, for a Sasquatch to turn invisible is I'm like, okay, that's probably like more of a mystical thing, right? But then some people are like, no, there are creatures that can do that, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm going to say right now that if Sasquatch does turn invisible, then I absolutely have had an experience, because when we lived in Oregon, I would take my dogs up to the mountains all the time, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw like this like saran wrap lens kind of thing to the corner a little bit, and I looked over and there was nothing there. To the point where it's like I didn't ever really like think about
Yeah.
it. But if that
Yeah.
turns out to be a thing, then that's like
That's actually
that's
Yeah.
pretty. Anyway, so that's kind of what people think. There's some people who think that, oh my gosh, I heard a story once of someone who like had a family of Sasquatch that lived close or on their property, and they said that like one of the young Sasquatch hadn't like figured out the camouflaging abilities yet, and so one time they looked out the window and just saw two pair of legs walking across their yard.
like, the dad's watching like, oh my gosh, run,
He was just like, stop.
It's embarrassing.
There are some stories of people who like think that Sasquatch thinks that it's invisible, but it's not.
my
Like at the time, there was a reporting like in the 70s. There's a baseball game going on in Washington, like baby
T-ball.
yeah, like T-ball or whatever. And that someone somehow manages to hit a home run over the fence, and they follow the ball and they just see like a Sasquatch standing out there, just like front, like squared off to the crowd, and it's just like this, and like turns around and walks away. But like a lot of people from that game reported that. They're like, we saw a Sasquatch, and it's like the ball bounced in front of it, and it was like,
Oh, but like, they can't see me at all.
they can't see me.
Slowly walk away.
I feel like that's the thing is, yeah, there would have to be something camouflage. I don't know if it's, I mean, I don't know any animals that have fur or hair that can change, but then maybe
So
it's just
birds can turn
yeah.
green, or birds have feathers that are green, like bright blue, purple, red, because the way the DNA is constructed in feathers is different than hair. Hair, you don't get those hues because of just like the DNA construct of it, right?
Right.
So someone can make an argument like, oh, a chameleon has crystals in its skin that it they kind of break apart and it reflects light differently, or there's a spider that can turn from yellow to white depending on what flower it's on, or like octopus or
Yeah, I was gonna say I was thinking of like underwater.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but none
definitely
of those
underwater.
things are mammalian or have hair.
Yeah.
To have the
Yeah.
ability to make hair,
That's-
that's like a little more. That's why I think I personally consider it to be like more mystical
Mystical.
side of it.
Yeah.
And it explains a
So-
lot why we haven't been able to, really get good luck. Well, not that we get good looks, but maybe it's like, well, if they're invisible, then it can explain this feeling I had that I couldn't see them. Or like if they're
Yeah.
invisible,
Okay, continuing the conversation. We, so what Bigfoot probably isn't. He probably isn't an alien. I've heard people that like they treat
I don't
like
know.
aliens treat the like our world like we treated Australia, where they send like their fugitives. Like they're like some weird theories.
okay, Judah,
But-
that seems accurate.
Yeah, this seems pretty. I wouldn't blame them
I
for
wouldn't
that.
blame them for that.
So,
It's burning planet.
Yeah, just it's going down anyway. Just send them there. Okay, and then what he probably is, if Sasquatch exists, is either some type of great ape like a Gigantopithecus. Have you guys heard of that?
No.
Oh, so they found this bone structure of something that's
Like a humanoid.
yes, this humanoid thing that used to live in like Asia or something.
Okay.
And pretty much like this was it.
Oh, that definitely looks like
Like
the start of a
I don't like
Bigfoot.
that.
yeah. So it was enormous. Like this is like a scale, like how big it would have been to a
Wow.
human.
Oh my
I could
gosh.
crush you.
So or like caveman rendition of this. But I don't think it is necessarily bipedal. It's much more okay, so you guys saw Jungle Book. Like it had an enormous
Oh,
that was a
right.
Gigantopithecus.
Oh, okay. So that's like
I think they even changed the lyrics a little bit in that song.
they
but-
did to.
I think he says I'm like a Gigantopithecus. I think he
Oh.
says that actually.
Oh gosh.
I just knew about it, so that's why it stood out to me. Don't you dare. just it's so hard to edit this out. Please don't. Okay, I'm addressing you. You don't have to like mouth your. Okay, just go. Just go. But try to.
I have to. Oh.
That's not the bathroom. Why do I have to go? Gosh dang it.
That slam was the start.
Okay, first of all. Okay.
Okay,
So this
great.
is a guy who's who created a Gigantopithecus. I don't know why. Like. Okay, so this man created a life-size model of a Gigantopithecus. I don't know why he made it so that he was embracing him. Like he had that in mind
Yeah, he was like
the
this
whole
will be a
time.
good.
Like he's like my like this is the reason why he didn't go to prom is because
Yeah,
but
why
then
is
he like
doing,
made it like a
sexy
prom.
lean.
Yeah, it's sexy
lean
lean.
over. I wish
I'm his
everybody
slave.
could see this. Yeah, I am his slave. Yeah, maybe we should go into that next time.
I'm not willingly here. I'm standing. Like I thought it was kind of funny.
SOS with my eyes.
I should actually look
Help
into the
me.
background of
He's
that guy.
blinking.
I should do research on who that guy is.
Yeah,
and
that
what
should be the
his
next
life is.
topic. Of like
So-
people that are into
His
that.
life,
Yeah. So what Sasquatch most likely is that, or something like that.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, have you guys ever taken like the 23andMe?
No, I
test?
haven't, but
No.
I know people that have.
So
I don't
of
know
those
what that
people,
is.
okay, you do the spit test and it comes back with what percentage of your ancestry you are.
Oh, I have done that.
Okay, yeah, I thought you
yeah.
did. So
Sorry.
some people like comes back and says Neanderthal, right? Like some
Really?
people have a percentage of Neanderthal. Sorry.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, some people.
You have to be over 6 foot.
I feel personally attacked.
Neanderthal.
Neanderthal. Oh, okay. Yeah. So, yeah. Gosh, you're so funny. I'm just kidding. Okay. So, but pretty much, I'm like, if Bigfoot is like a caveman type
Yeah.
thing, or let's say Neanderthal, then people who have, that's how you say it.
Sorry, go on. I mean, it's good. I believe you. This was my joke was so good. But go on.
Every time it comes up.
Sorry, go on.
Okay.
But there's
Anyway,
this percentage that's still out there in your DNA.
so some people like, they're like, oh, I'm 20% Armenian. I'm,
Yeah.
50% German. I don't know like how it exactly, I don't know if it does it like that, but
Yeah.
No, it does.
does it say like nationality or does it say like you're Caucasian, you are like,
Mine did it was 13% Sweden.
Oh, really? So it
And,
actually has
yeah.
okay. So yeah, but
Swedish.
however, I don't know how it has to. You are literally the.
Sorry. I just got on it. I'm sorry. I'm done with that. Go on. Go, but well, I'm just so go on with that some people have it come back.
Some people, it says you have this percentage of Neanderthal.
No
Yes.
way.
And which makes sense that there was intermingling or whatever. And we know that there were different humanoids, and like Homo erectus is not Homo sapien. Like we're Homo
Yeah.
sapien,
Yeah.
right? So there were definitely at some point things that were bipedal
That's
like us.
true. That's true.
And you think of it's such, I don't know. I guess this is more like a interesting like psychological concept that we hate most things that are very, very close to us rather than things or people that are so different. You know, and
that's true.
And so it's like that's just some part of our psyche, which makes sense that if there was something that an animal that was closer to us than it was to animal, how we would hate it and want to kill it.
Because
right?
we're just like so egocentric as
yes
humans, where it's like we are the most superior. There's nothing that's even close to
Which-
our intelligence or our shape.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, and the fact that there aren't any more proves that we are superior. So,
Obviously,
I'm just kidding.
we got rid of those.
No, but pretty much, I'm just like, man, but if people are walking around with like 1 or 0.5% of Neanderthal like DNA, it's like we see Bigfoot all the time. Just,
Ooh,
you know what I mean?
parts of them.
It's kind of interesting. So anyway,
Look at tall
so-
people differently now.
one of the biggest,
Okay.
Can I mention it? My sub actually
My
was
sub-
like Sasquatch.
So any person that you know that is really tall and very hairy probably has DNA.
This is why I needed
Bigfoot.
professionals like you on the
need
podcast
exactly.
to tell me that tall people.
tall hairy people with big
Are
foreheads.
Bigfoot.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Linked to crime. That was actually a thing for a while.
Linked to crime?
Yeah, if you had like they thought that your physical features could
Really?
lead to criminal activity.
Like phrenology or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Another time.
Now, so the biggest thing that people have said is like, there's no, okay, if you don't find Sasquatch, that's one thing. But the way I understand it is that there should be a pyramid of foundation of supporting evidence of something living or existing.
Okay.
And then that thing is just like that last little, triangle on the tip of the pyramid, right? But
Right.
it should, and they're saying not only can we not prove that the tip of this pyramid doesn't exist, like we can't prove that Bigfoot is, but we don't even have the foundation for it, is what some people argue.
Okay.
I don't think so, because just like I explained, like we have cavemen and other like Homo sapiens, or Homo erectus species. So I don't really see that as much. I'm sure they could go more into that, but there's recently a discovery made in China, in the Dragon River, of something that when I read this, I was like, this is the fossil record that we needed to
Like the
support
link.
the idea of a Sasquatch.
When
Okay.
was it found?
Like last year.
Was
Yeah.
it old?
Very old. So they call it
I wanted that to sound more like maybe I should. Well, when was it dated? That's what I meant. Not is it old?
Is it old?
okay.
Sorry.
Yes.
Yes, it's old. Okay.
Yes, it's old. Hold on. I gotta sign in.
Is it old?
But okay, essentially, is the Dragon River in China. There was they started digging things out, and they found a skull of something.
Okay.
And they're like, we didn't know this existed. This skull, this piece existed. I thought that the Sasquatch community would just go buck wild and be like, yeah,
That's
see?
it.
And
This is
okay,
the evidence.
yeah, this is the
is what
evidence we've been
looking
missing.
Yeah.
To support this idea there might be something. It's been crickets. I think I'm we're the first people drawing this connection. I'm
Gosh,
what am I missing?
Get on the
Can't
forums. Get on the forums.
Where's that guy?
Henry.
Where's that
Gosh.
guy that didn't touch the orb?
Yeah, where is he? When we need him.
They warned them about this discovery.
Yeah, gosh,
He
he's
was preserved
yeah,
for a reason.
Do you know what? He didn't believe him. He went back to that orb. Like
Okay.
moth to a flame.
His name's Bernie.
Bernie for a reason.
Bernie.
Bernie.
Okay.
It was an experiment from the aliens is how dumb are humans. We're going to show them a physical example of death.
Bro, you'll literally die if you touch this. They're like, we're going to leave it here. Let's just wait the next day. He's just like...
That doesn't make sense why they had to bring the Bigfoot. Though.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
they bring another cute. They bring a unicorn.
Yeah,
to
they're
touch
like,
it.
all right, we'll try. Well, they tried the unicorn, and then they're like, oh, they didn't think it was human enough. We'll bring a Bigfoot. This is you. This is what will happen to you if you touch it.
That's so funny.
Okay, wait. So they have it out. All
So
right.
people from the Bigfoot community are just crickets. And, and people from the scientific or anthropology community are like, have said less drawing this. I mean, so I pulled up the National Geographic that kind of like debuted this discovery.
Okay.
This article, and they don't mention anything like, hey, like they didn't even do a wink or a nod to Sasquatch believers like, hey, this might be the stuff. And like the gall of these people because it is so blatant.
It is so blatant.
Look.
All right, give us
Are you
a
gonna show us the picture?
Yeah, well, I'm going to show you the rendition of like these people are so belligerent that this is clearly the Sasquatch like evidence. And look how they depicted this thing. I mean, I'm hairier than that guy.
Wow.
No,
Wow.
but look at this.
Look at those feet.
Emphasis on
Yeah.
On the
enormous
huge
feet.
It's true.
They're like, this is what he must have looked like.
6-pack, yeah.
Nice.
Wow.
Interesting. You go there.
Oh, we're noticing.
It was very
We're
detailed.
just, yeah, it's
Are
very
you-
detailed.
Attracted to this?
Oh, I do
No.
that.
No, not my type. He's a little too Neanderthal for me.
Oh, no, too much for my liking. All right.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Anyway, but they describe it. So it says here, and there was so when they first found it,
Yeah.
and then there was a skull's unusual size. It's enormous, says paleoanthropologist Chris Stinger of London's Natural History Museum. That was his comment. It's enormous.
Okay, so that's the point, is that because a lot of the previous...
Everything we know about is smaller than us.
Yes, exactly. I've actually been to DC, to the Natural History Museum, where you can see the actual bones of these, different species, and yeah, they're all smaller. Because it was almost like we know how evolution, the picture, smaller, bigger, bigger.
Yeah.
Right.
But so that's interesting that this is huge.
Yes, and this is
that
what someone said. That someone said, I've held a lot of other human skulls and fossils, but never like this. And that's kind of like a funny statement. Like,
Yeah.
So what do you think? I've held a lot of other skulls and fossils. But it's
Not
interesting.
like
I've held a lot. Listen to this. I've held a lot of other human skulls. Meaning, they think this is more like a human descent. More human than not.
Oh,
Right?
definitely. Well,
So-
even that picture, that depiction. I mean, not that it's 100% accurate. It's not real.
I know
but
this
it's
is
a
like
joke.
the artist rendition. That's why I'm like, come on, man. If you have the
Yeah.
artistic liberty, give him some like Hobbit hair on his feet
okay,
or
actually,
something.
that's so true. And that would be way more accurate. I just feel like, in general, I feel like that they would have more hair.
Like I have more hair on my shoulders than that.
Like, even I've been to public pools where there's more hair on
I've seen gum with more hair than that.
bathroom floors with more.
So, yeah. But anyway, I'm just like, it's just very interesting that they just almost didn't even want to, just encourage the concept that this might be that missing thing. And so,
Yeah.
we'll get into conspiracies in a few minutes, but not yet.
I'm
We
ready.
haven't
But I
gone
just-
there
We
yet.
haven't gone there. We've talked about aliens.
I know.
I thought the aliens were conspiring
Yeah.
with Bigfoot.
Okay.
Before we get
You guys are two really smart people. Do you think people, so that people who are seeing Sasquatch,
okay.
if they are not being hoaxed or just
Right.
straight up hoaxing, lying themselves,
Okay.
and Bigfoot just isn't real, then that leaves misidentification, or they think that they saw it.
Right.
So, and most of the time people are saying like, someone's like, yeah, I know someone who saw Sasquatch. They're like, what were they drinking?
Yeah.
Or like,
We're smoking.
what were they smoking? Yeah, it's like, but something very interesting about that is that people know when they're high. And
yes.
you-
Generally,
you-
yes.
Okay.
Just kidding. My experience. No.
Okay. So, I pulled some definitions off of main drug awareness websites, and pretty much kind of breaking down the effects. And there are 4 common and classic hallucinogens.
Yeah.
Now, it's true, someone who has had an immense amount of alcohol can start to see things that maybe are or aren't there. But that's not the encounters that we're really talking about. Like if someone's super drunk, like, bro, there's like, anyway. So let's look at hallucinogens, people who are on drugs. Let's explore this idea. There are 4 common: LSD, psilocybin, which is from shrooms,
Right.
peyote, which is from like a cactus,
Yep.
and DMT, which is from plants. I think it's the ayahuasca plant is the main one on that, but they're pretty much just plants that are hallucinogens.
Yeah.
People know when they're tripping out on this because they don't only see Bigfoot, they see elves. And like they go to like, I don't know, they have like these, like they're tripping. They're
like tasting colors.
Yes, exactly. They're like licking the wall.
They're
like
licking the walls. It is just a trip, as they might say.
No, yeah, it's a trip. So I'm just like, okay, if people are like, they're on drugs. Okay, well, let's break that down a little bit. For them to be hallucinating, they really kind of have to be on 4. Well, these are the most common ones. There are, but it's like they kind of have to be on one of these 4. And you know, if someone's like, "Oh, I took peyote, and I also saw Bigfoot yesterday, but it wasn't related," you know, it's like,
I don't know about that.
Yeah, it's like people are going like, "Yeah, I saw Bigfoot, but I also was like, okay, have you seen 14 Peaks on Netflix?
Oh,
version?
I've seen part of it.
Okay,
Yeah.
it's incredible. It is so good. He saw the Yeti. Well, and it's not a big part. I don't even know if he mentions it in the documentary, but at one point, he was so low on oxygen, and and I think it could have been a hallucination. It could have been, and
Because
that's why he just says he's like, yeah, I ran out of oxygen, like I was gonna die in the next 20 minutes if I didn't get oxygen. Oh yeah, and I saw the Yeti during that time. You know, so it's like okay, like
yeah,
you know, you can see that. I'm just saying it's not like people use that like, oh, like they're this or that. They're on drugs or they're drinking too much. It's like that isn't really how it works though.
Yeah. And also those are not like, you know, common, not that people aren't taking them, but they're just not like obviously you can get alcohol, you know, anywhere. But I feel like those specific like hallucinogens are harder to obtain than just like maybe you're like run of the mill weed or heroin for that matter. But like those are like, you can obviously buy them in different quantities, but it's not just like you accidentally ate this cactus that, you know, or like it would be like on purpose. And usually people aren't in the woods necessarily. Like if they are, they're not too far deep into the woods where they're like, I'm going to take some shrooms out here, which could happen. But again, you're like, did you see Bigfoot that time? We're not going to take that. People are just out hiking. They're not like, I'm going to pack in some peyote. Yeah. And I'm just going to go on a trip where I'm, you know, nobody can help me. Yeah. Peace pipe, you know.
So it just like doesn't really stand on its own 2 feet when you break it down. And I'm not saying that people don't see things when they are on a hallucinogenic drug, but I'm just saying that that's not really what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Another one is like, okay, I mentioned misidentifications. Like people say like, oh, you see something off in the distance, like bears can walk on their hind legs. It's like, yeah, but then the proximity that these people are with these Sasquatch, it's like they would have said, I saw a bear walking on his hind legs. They did, but they don't. Yeah. They say it was a male Sasquatch standing there and it growled at me and it had this color eyes and the baby was right there too. It's like very descriptive.
Yeah. And I feel like you're expecting to see a bear. So like if you were to see, I feel like more, a Sasquatch would be mistaken for a bear rather than a bear mistaken for a Sasquatch. Because it's like, obviously, we're so used to seeing bears and stuff. So if you saw something in the woods, be like, that was a bear. Because, I'm in the woods. I'm expected to see a bear. Yeah. I feel like your first thought wouldn't be like, that is like, that's a Sasquatch. That's what it was. So you would really have to be descriptive, or like, it would really have to be so different from a bear to be like, that's what I saw.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, exactly. So let's get into the nitty-gritty of what makes the Sasquatch experience unique to Sasquatch. Okay. One of the most common things is tree knocking. Have you ever heard that association with tree? Okay.
No, I don't think so.
So people, and these are very interesting too, because if they are related to Sasquatch, so many more people have had encounters than they think, you know, like everyone in this room could have potentially, except for you. I'm just kidding. Now, tree knocks. People have different theories about tree knocks, but it's very common to hear tree knocks in relation to... It's correlated with Sasquatch encounters. Now, and I think some people even said they've seen tree knocking. People even have theories of like, if you hear 3, that means 3 knocks on a tree. Like essentially they're picking up a club and then hitting a tree, and it's just like kind of thing.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. Is how
Tons of recordings.
Orbits.
Yeah, and I can show you guys these later just if you're interested. But you know, the description is enough for the podcast right now.
Right.
But so you get tree knocks, and then actually I'll put a few clips, just insert them here so you can, you know, it's more interactive. But you get tree knocks.
Oh, that's cool. Tree
Yeah.
knock.
Yeah.
Wow. I see.
A little creepy.
Yeah, a little creepy out in the woods like that.
Now, you get those, and then some people even think like it's like a beacon, like how a wolf will howl. So like to get back to their pack,
okay.
or whatever. Like
Keep track
you hear
of
a knock,
everybody.
or like a sonar, like hey, we're moving this direction. If you hear it, like go get fainter and fainter that way. That means they're moving that way.
Okay.
What drives me crazy is that Sasquatch explorers or like researchers will go and they'll be like, all right, we're gonna set up camp here. We're gonna do some tree knocks, see if we get anything, and they just go up and they pull out like a wooden baseball bat like this big, and they're just like on a tree, and they're just like, and they'll be like, nothing. And like, but sometimes it'll be like, hear that?
That's
Down there?
something.
And then it's like funny enough, they do get like some stuff that responds. You're like, that's actually kind of compelling. What is
You're
responding
like,
to
why?
them?
You're like, who is out there?
Who's out there? Yeah.
Just some hikers.
So granted to them, there may be, but I'm just like, okay, the only times animals respond to imitation is the context has to be right and the imitation has to be spot on. If you go to a zoo and start making like elephant noises, they're gonna ignore you like all day. Like they'll
Yes,
never
I
respond,
agree.
you know, or if you go to a dog and start barking. Well, dogs are a little different because they're very, very interactive compared to other animals. But like, can you get a cat to meow like by meowing at it? I don't know. But let's think of wild animals.
Yeah, and they have like I think wild would be the difference. Is like they're not interacting with people.
Yes.
So it's like they're only like hearing their own calls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the context has to be right as far as like, okay. So one thing that's very common are elk calls hunting, right? And they actually draw elk in with that and get elk to respond.
Right.
But they do that during the season, during the rut, when elk are going crazy. They're trying to fight off other bull elk. They're trying to mate. They're trying to do all this. It's the rut.
time.
Very stressful time. and we're going to take advantage of that.
We're gonna take advantage of that.
But so the context is right? They're expecting to hear other elk bugle.
Right.
And then not only that, but an elk, like people who practice elk calls, they don't listen to music. They listen to real elk, like in the car, real elk calls in the car, and then practice bugles and stuff. And because it's like, you have to be exactly like that.
Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
so if you ever see someone driving a car and they're just like,
I have not.
now you know what's
now
going
I
on.
know because I was
They're
wondering
practicing.
what all those people were doing during the.
I went to the
rut.
hunting
that's
expo
what
here
I'm
in Salt Lake a few months ago, and they had a part of the whole convention center was a elk bugling contest.
Wow.
Yeah, it's serious. It's like
Who was the judge?
an elk.
An elk.
Yeah,
An elk.
the stuffed head
herd,
elk.
man.
He was a stuffed head elk.
Yeah, but you see him blink of approval, not of approval from the
They're,
elk.
they look at like a elk, like taxidermy elk, and just like glass eyes. They're like, they look back at him. They're like, no,
No, I'm sorry. No winner this year again.
no winner again.
Darn it. Guess we've come up empty. We have not been chosen. It's like,
That's so funny. Like you stay there late enough at night, and like they like take the wood off, and there's a hole in the wall, and the elk is like, it's like a live elk.
stretching. Like, oh man, another year.
These guys suck at elk
Guys
bugles.
suck. I could totally tell it was human. It wasn't by looking
Now
at
give
him.
him outs.
They should blindfold him next year.
Yeah,
so he can't
blindfold
see.
him. It was like-
He's just straight
So,
hearing it.
You see,
Our music's real.
Yeah,
you
God.
see a hoof pop up and pull the eye come out.
He's like, I know. He's like, where are the honey?
He's like, he's like,
That was good. That was good. You got me there. Gosh, wow.
Slips it back over his eyes.
Now he's embarrassed. He
Motionless
thought,
again.
Yeah, he thought it was gonna be a nice date that night.
He's like,
Excuse me.
he's like, oh.
They're just some burly white guy that's like,
He's like, what? It's like, you thought there was a taxidermy elk as a judge?
for real? Are you
Really?
serious?
Oh my
Who
gosh.
brought the mushrooms to this?
Yeah,
commercial?
shrimp. Just they think it's jerky. It's just
Pass around the
shrimp.
peeps.
Just dried mushrooms. Everybody's eating it.
They're like, you must eat this before the contest.
Samples. Anybody want samples?
People are licking the walls.
Oh, I want to go. I'm going
Okay.
next year. So that's a great party.
Really?
Oh my gosh. So the tree knocks. Context, imitation. That's what you need.
Okay.
And these people, they pull like a wooden baseball bat out of their backpacks and start just hitting trees around. I'm like, you have no idea what 1 knock or 20 knocks or you don't know what anything means.
Yeah.
And
it's a baseball bat. Like, do they have
it's
bats?
do you think a Sasquatch is picking up like a little league bat
Yeah.
kind of thing? It's like with his favorite baseball team on it, it's just like hitting a tree. They were
Yeah.
picking up an enormous thing going boom.
Yeah.
I would imagine. I was like, if you had to guess, that would be where
That'd
you would
be
trend.
accurate. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Is that like what they think they use to communicate with each other? Like the
yes,
Bigfoot?
with Sasquatch,
Okay.
yeah. So another thing is actual screams.
That'd
Yeah.
be terrifying.
Yeah.
So creepy.
So
Being in the woods.
it sounds like screaming women, like just a howl.
I'm sure it's not a banshee because I've heard about banshees.
It could
Actually,
be.
closely related to the Bigfoot,
The banshee is?
the banshee.
Really?
Well, yeah, you know, I wonder if the banshee is the Bigfoot of like Ireland. You know what I mean?
Really?
Well, I mean, they hear a scream.
It's a scream?
Scream in the night. Yep.
Okay.
It's.
So
Kind of
I think it's a
death?
sign of death, but maybe
There-
that's a little bit more
Yeah.
folklore.
there are the most like comprehensive or most accurate, presumably, recordings that they have were recorded in the Sierra mountain range.
Okay.
And they call them the Sierra sounds. So I'm going to play that for you guys.
Oh boy.
Tree knocks. This is what they think.
Oh my gosh.
Let me clarify. This place is so remote that they don't even want to disclose where it is because it's like you have to take several days on horseback to get up there.
Oh wow.
Fun fact,
is
there was a
terrifying.
forest fire in California, forest fire in this area. They went back to look after these forest fires and this place is perfectly preserved. Just a side note. Okay, it gets more intense. Hear that? Here, listen to this.
Oh, I do not like that.
Sounds like a big gorilla.
No, but there's actually like talking.
Whoa. That is.
They're trying to talk to us.
I think they're trying to talk to us.
Some reaction.
So that's the hunter.
I know it's not right.
Yeah,
It's kind of funny, but listen closely.
Like a laughing duck.
Whoa.
Bizarre.
I do not like that.
It sounds like they're trying to imitate what they're hearing from the humans.
So there's a lady who had an experience in Washington,
Okay.
and she was telling her experience to like someone who's done a lot of research in it, and she said that once they spotted her, it was like a family. They started chattering at each other like kind of stuff,
Yeah.
back and forth. And he said, "Did it sound like this?" And he played the. She's like, exactly.
Wow.
And she was there like
Goodness.
they were on. That's actually an interesting story. I might tell a little bit more of that, but yeah, incredible. So yeah, maybe they're imitating some people. Some Native American legends, regarding Sasquatch, say that they're master imitators. They can imitate any sound, even loved ones' sounds. like calling you. So, yeah, so it's really interesting that there's so much evidence of this recorded, but we just don't, like, no one's really, anyway.
Yeah, that's
I'll get more on that in a sec. Now, so screams, whistles, impersonations. So, like, straight up, like, if you were in the woods and you say, it sounds like, or people who live, like, in campsites, they'll hear stuff like, hello, hello, which sounds really funny.
Yeah.
But then it's because we answer phones at hello, and so that's what they think. Is why they might say hello to, like, hello, like, because that's what they hear us say.
Well, probably, like, if you heard something in the woods, you'd probably be like, hello? Like,
Yeah.
That's what you would say.
Yeah, exactly. So,
calling back out. Yeah. Like, hello, is anybody there?
now, another one is pacing people out. Someone will walk in the woods, and they'll hear, with every one of their steps, they'll hear steps going on just in the distance. Now, when a Sasquatch does something aggressive or throws rocks or that someone has a face-to-face encounter and it just seems like, hey, I just think I was getting a little too close to their family or whatever, then it's almost always paired with being paced out. Or people are in the woods and they're like, something was pacing me. That's very, very correlated with Sasquatch, which is just like, when you stop, they stop. But it's just out of sight, just out of view.
Yeah.
And so that's definitely characteristic. Another one that's not as common, but is definitely seen sometimes, is a stink or an odor that smells like urine or like a dead body or just a nasty smelling stuff. Sometimes they'll smell that before, and sometimes people have very, very close encounters and they never smell that at all.
Okay.
So maybe it's an adrenaline thing. Like when they get nervous, they like stink more,
Yeah.
or they have glands that they can secrete that more or less.
Just
like,
to put people off. That could do it.
and like, yeah, and funny enough, maybe there are some that just have like worse hygiene than others. Like it's like,
There's like, man, that's old Carl.
yeah.
I encountered him. He reeks. We've been telling him for days, but he won't take a shower.
Okay, so one is rock throwing.
Okay.
And not only rock throwing, but rock throwing like enormous rocks. People will say sometimes like pebbles, sometimes what's it called? Pine cones, and sometimes like enormous rocks, like get out of here kind of thing.
Oh, geez.
And sometimes they'll land them, very common, just right at your feet. That's like something like I've researched tons of encounters. People say, and a rock came flying out of nowhere, landed right at my feet. Like they're very accurate, and intentional. It's like, that's crazy. There's this guy who said he had an encounter with his dad. They were in family land up in somewhere in the Pacific Northwest, but like hundreds and if not thousands of acres of land. They were hiking through it, and it was like one night. And this is actually one of the best ways to deal with them. A Sasquatch is just to talk to them, like
That's good to know.
be reasonable with them and say, hey, so
To leave.
we'll leave if you're like, but you say like,
Run.
hey, like, so they're actually, even here in Utah, there are a lot of like the Ute tribe, they have encountered, they say they always say to do is just say, hey brother, I'm here. I'm not trying to disrespect you. I'm leaving, and just talk to them like that. And it's never like turns out bad when you do that. And they just kind of leave you alone.
Yeah.
So this guy said he was walking through they were hiking, several days of hiking. They were like on the third day. And, there's movement out in the tree line as they were going to sleep. And the dad was just like, hey, it's okay, son. And he's like, Dad, what's out there? And he's like, it's okay. And they go to sleep, and they have like little rocks being thrown at their tent, like all night. And then all of a sudden, like a big boulder kind of rolls by, and he's like, I think that's the like adolescent doing that. And so the dad goes out with his gun and he stands there. He's like, hey, I know what you're doing. We're trying to sleep. Leave us alone. And then it just stopped. Everything stopped. They just went away. And it just stopped.
God.
So it seems like every time someone tries to reason with one or just like say something like that, they just kind of like leave you alone kind of thing. As long as you're reasonable and respectful.
That's interesting.
That is.
That people who get into this also will say that their personalities must vary as much as humans will vary.
Which makes sense, even with animals in general.
Yeah, makes complete sense. So you never want to like be like, oh, I'm fine, like, But anyway, okay. So another one is that their movements are as if they're on conveyor belts. They can just glide. So there's one person I was like kind of refreshing some stories. There's a guy who said he was out looking for a good spot to hunt with his friend. And they got a big rock thrown at them, land at their feet, classic. And they look up, and there's a big male Sasquatch. And it, like, as they looked up at it, they said it turned around and started walking away, but the foliage was up high, but it was as if it rotated, like, on like a lazy Susan kind of, like it was just like rotated and then like walked and just like a conveyor belt. Now this lady who saw them and heard them talking, I don't think you have time for me to go through the whole story, but she pretty much was on the beach in Washington and a whole family of Sasquatch comes out.
Oh, gosh.
And the male is waist deep in the waves throwing seaweed to the two females, which are biting the seaweed and rubbing it on their chest and draping it over themselves, while the three young were playing around like on their hands and feet, or like they're on all fours the whole time.
Beach day.
Yeah,
Stay with the fam.
the male sees her, and with the most intense hate that she's ever seen in her something's eyes, it charges straight towards her. She said that its ability to cover ground and walk through waves in the ocean, and it was waist deep, right, or chest deep, and it just like went straight through. She said it was gliding how it walked. So there must be something about their bones and ligaments. Like, we have a balance to our set, but if we really try to, we can like crouch down and do that. There must be just something about their physiology or their anatomy that makes it so that they can move just like real. Which, okay, so if you are hunting, would it make sense that they would develop that? Because if you're hunting and you want to get your binoculars up, if you want to scare the moose or elk away, or just the predator or the prey animal, if you want to scare them away, like you move like this, fast, or you jolt, or you go like this, like they're like something's off. They'll leave. You're legit. Like, hunters will sit there and they'll be like this, like with their binoculars, just like slowly bring it up. And so that movement of being able to smoothly like move makes sense that why they would develop that.
Yeah, and you wouldn't be able. It wouldn't catch your eye. If it was jolty, then you'd be like in the corner of your eye or whatever, you'd be able to see it. But if it was smooth, then you probably wouldn't even notice it.
Yeah.
Smooth movements, we rarely, and actually pay attention to that now, like in your own life. Next time you see something, you're like, what was that? It's guarantee it was like a sudden or jolty movement.
Yeah.
Something falling, something.
Yeah. But if something's like, we got trees outside, we have stuff move, there's movement here, nothing really catches the eye that's kind of like natural. Like, anyway. So that gliding movement is very common. People describe that all the time. Okay. Growling. So here's something very interesting. Double joints. No one describes it. People never describe it like that, but they say it dropped when it saw me, it dropped to the ground, and it was like a transformer, or like, I don't know what it did with its arms and legs. It was so strange how it moved to the ground. I think that their legs can be double jointed, meaning they can bend this way and bend the other way.
Whoa.
Yeah, I think, and the reason I think, and maybe not always, but I think they might be able, because someone said it was like a transformer spider when it got on the ground, and like it was like you couldn't believe how fast it was. Sorry. I started warming up with some funny stories, but there are like creepy things.
I'm just gonna
But
say,
think of this.
I'm gonna hope that they're not real.
If you knew that this was real, if you knew that this was real, and it was like, we don't live in society like we do. It's rural. You're going out and you're homesteading. You're settling a new area. You know they're real. Let's say thousands of years ago. I would kill every single one that came close, because it's terrifying.
Yeah, so
100%.
Yeah.
Because it's like, this thing can do anything. It's enormous. So it's like, it makes sense that they would get a healthy fear or get such low population. It's just, and I hate to say that, because I'd like to say, oh no, like, I'll respect them, they'll respect me, I'll establish a perimeter. But it's like, imagine going about your day and you just see an enormous thing standing in your window like that, and you have kids. Or it kills your dog or something. Like, it's just, Anyway, double joints is something. Now, another one is tree peeking that they do. Is like,
I've seen that. That's, I think, the most common thing I've seen. It's just the... So.
But that's a very common thing. Sometimes people will be like, very smooth. Yeah, it's like, so
water.
One that's very interesting is arm draping. And these are things that...
Wait, arm draping?
Arm draping over trees.
Oh, it's not like...
So, hey. You're walking, you think you walk past a tree, and it's just like...
You see a tap, it's like, how many shoulders do you have? 1, 2... That was
smooth move. He's just like,
just camouflages back.
It's just like,
wait, what?
They can't see me.
Hides behind a tree, peeks out.
Okay, that actually reminds me, there are some like stories that people tell. They're like, I should have got tapped on the shoulder to turn around. There's nothing there. Kind of stuff. It's just like,
It was somebody learning the trick. They panic.
try it on
Kick
the
it out.
try it on
Chicken
the
out.
try it
Glide
on the
away.
humans
Glide
until you
away.
perfect it, and then move on to the Sasquatch ladies.
Yeah. So we're trying on them. Okay. Oh, it's 2 shoulders.
Yeah.
Not 1.
Oh my gosh. So draping, they do this to a tree where they'll see like an arm like hugging the front of a tree.
I've heard that too.
Yeah, and they kind of, I think what that is that if you're looking right at it, well, first of all, if their fur or whatever may blend in a little more.
Yeah.
Then but you think about it, if you're behind something and you're going to be disjointed from it, and
Yeah.
but no one's ever spelled out like this. But to me, it makes sense that if you hug the front of a tree, you can like kind of shift around it like this. And follow the shape of the tree because you're feeling it. Follow the shape of the tree and like see what's going on rather than being behind it and being like, it's like you're feeling. So, but that's something really common is they just say they see it of arm draping. Just any kind of draping. They're feeling their environment. So that's a really common thing.
Okay.
Understanding English, like how I explained, where it's like, hey, we know what you're doing. Leave us alone. Or understanding at least intent. Glowing eyes.
Oh, like
glowing.
Glowing is in
Now I see
like
the
when the
alien
light.
connection.
Yeah. Wait a second. It's getting more common. Well, is it like, let's say, I don't know, a wolf or a
Like
cougar?
reflective?
Reflective eyes, or is it actually? I saw glowing eyes in the woods.
So
Dark,
interesting
no
you say
light.
that because people will say I saw glowing eyes, and mentally they're thinking reflective. Like my dog does that. It scares the crap out of me sometimes. Where I'm just like, I'm like, are you out here? I'll shine the light, see the
And it's
eyes. I'm
just
like,
like-
oh, and she's like just wagging her tail.
Yeah.
But so that's what you think. But then you're like, well, why did you say glowing? Why didn't you say reflective? They're like, oh. Well, because it was like it was glowing. So it's actually kind of a mystery. There seems to be something hypnotic. Sasquatch sometimes they try to get eye contact with people. They try to do it because there's sometimes like, this is more of like the woo or like the more mystical side of it. They attribute some abilities to, to kind of be able to hypnotize or connect or get you to freeze. There's some stories where someone's like, I couldn't move as long as I held eye contact. I could not move. So there's a lot of connection with the eyes. But glowing red, you don't really see reflective red eyes
Oh, that's true.
either.
Yeah.
But they'll ask, so like you can ask people to clarify and be like, hey, like were those were they reflective or were they glowing? And people are like, I don't know. Probably reflect. Like it's a toss up. People really don't know.
Quite sure.
But everyone's gut instinct tends to say glowing red. So my brother lives in Oregon. And he had a patient come to him, and he works in a clinic that works with mental health. And this person had mental health issues, but this person who actually went to go like escape his issues and live in the woods for a little bit said that a big Bigfoot creature came up and had glowing eyes.
Okay.
Now, yes, this person was committed to a facility for mental health issues.
Yeah.
But he brings up this like, okay, maybe he is making up glowing eyes. But that matches every single other person's thing. So I'm like, well, dang. Anyway.
Well, and that's what's hard. The credibility is not there, but that doesn't mean that it's not true. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so now we've talked about glowing lights are associated with it. No one knows why. Some people...
Orbs.
Yeah, the orb. Some people believe that they can transform into an orb and move that way. Like some people, and that like traces back to Native American folklore as well. Like they have that ability.
Is that connected? Are they with the Native American lore? Is I guess Bigfoot and like skinwalkers, are they separate or are they basically the same? In
So
different forms?
according to Ute tribe, if you encounter a Bigfoot, just say, hey, like I'm leaving. I'm just hunting, or like just tell them what they're doing and say, I don't mean to. If you encounter a skinwalker, they feed off fear, and you don't ever want to show them any fear or emotion that way because they are much more like a demonic side.
Yeah.
So generally speaking,
It's kind of interesting because I, for years, have thought that I've had an encounter with a skinwalker, right, up in Utah, but now
we're like Bear Lake.
No, up at Monticello, Utah.
Oh, really?
You know what it is? Yeah. It's camping up there. It was off season, right? So the camps weren't even open.
I remember that story.
Right? So nobody was on the mountain, and they hadn't been all winter. We were camping, and for 2 nights in a row, heard somebody or something walking around our tent.
Interesting.
And it was me and my cousin, and both of us had different encounters, and we thought it was the other person, but it turned out it wasn't. But now, kind of hearing it, maybe that wasn't a skinwalker, you know, because that's what we kind of, you know, maybe it was, because
Yeah.
there's a
Well,
lot of
that
ties
Skinwalker
there.
County.
Exactly. But then maybe it wasn't that. Maybe it was more Bigfoot.
Yeah.
You know, had it moved up further from, you know, because nobody had been there all winter or anything.
Yeah.
Everything was closed
Yeah.
down. So they might have come maybe closer down.
Really
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there are like stories differentiating the two. And there are other creatures out there like Dogman experiences, which are much more aggressive and like honestly terrifying experiences. Like if you encounter like a Sasquatch, there's a chance that you can be like, I'm backing out of this. But
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
other things seems to be worse things than Sasquatch that
Yeah.
you can encounter. But that's for another podcast, another day.
Yeah.
Another day.
Now, I have a theory.
Okay.
I have a theory of why Sasquatch are so hard to find sometimes, and I have a theory as to what you know, a little behavioral thing about them.
Okay.
I think they spend most of their time in trees,
Up
tall
high.
trees,
Okay.
up high,
Okay.
tall trees. Now, obviously, if they're in a place like here in Utah, I don't really think that that's super feasible. You know, yes,
Yeah.
you get up there
Yeah.
like big tall trees, but you think Oregon, Washington, Alaska, enormous
Wyoming,
trees, like
yeah.
Wyoming, like there's just these enormous trees that they can live in. I think, and I've never heard anyone else say this, is just like my own theory,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that they either spend a lot more time or sleep in trees or live up there or, you know, spend most of their time up there, because you would just never think to look up.
That's
And so
true.
you're
Yeah.
always like, where's Sasquatch? And every single Sasquatch expedition I've seen, they're like, yeah, like, where's the
Yeah.
Sasquatch? No one ever looks up. You never think to do that. And if you even like consider the possibility that they might be up there, well, that just like multiplies the chances of where they could be.
Oh,
Now,
exactly.
people could be doing that. I just don't think so. And you would say, well, like, no one's doing that because encounters, they're not like encountering them in trees. That's not true. Most encounters that people have with Bigfoot in big wooded areas are them jumping out of trees.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
Like surprising them or seeing them and then them coming out of the
or they'll
trees.
just be in a tree stand themselves hunting, and then all of a sudden they'll hear like boom, like hit the
Yeah.
ground, and they'll look, you know, or so. There have been people who say they see them in trees, and I mean, and why not? Trees are a great place to eat, to be safe from other predators.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what a leopard does. Because they live in like the savannah, hyenas, lions, everything. If they kill something, it's instinctual for them to drag it up a tree and eat it up there, rather because lions for the most part don't climb. Hyenas can't really get them. It's just
Yeah.
safer, so it makes sense. Okay, wolves aren't going up there. Most bears aren't climbing trees.
Yeah.
Black bears climb trees, but brown bears don't. So, anyway,
Well, probably maybe not as high as
no, brown bears aren't like they're not known for climbing trees.
no
But
black bears.
black bears climb. They're good climbers.
Oh, okay.
But you're dealing with black bears instead of wolves and brown bears, you know,
Yeah.
and like
And humans.
and humans, you know. So even if it's just, and that's something with nature, it's like you can't be completely safe, but if you can, you know,
Alleviate
weigh,
some of
weigh the
those
scale a
other
bit. So that's kind of like my own little theory. Now,
Interesting.
there are very friendly Sasquatch stories, and
I like those more.
things. Yeah,
where there was an old lady and she had a farm, and she noticed that something was getting into her garden. So she stayed up late one night and she looked out the window, and in the moonlight from the trees, she saw a Sasquatch family of 4 come out and like pick tomatoes, examine them, like gather them in their arms, squash and everything. And she would like weave rugs and she'd hang them out like to dry and stuff. And they would get all this stuff, and then on their way out, they'd just each grab like a rug off the line and walk away. And she was like, "Come on, those are my rugs." But she was like, but she lived out there by herself, so she decided to make friends instead. And instead, she set out baskets for them and gave them rugs that she was okay with them having, kind of
Leaving
thing.
out there. It's like
And
good
they
crappy
started
rugs.
they started to notice that she was setting stuff aside for them, and they started to appreciate it. So what they would do is some morning she would wake up and there would be a nice, like a really beautiful, like symmetrical pine cone on her porch.
That's
Or-
payment.
Yes, it's payment.
Payment.
Or like a really
This is even.
like a cool looking stone or something.
This
There's
is
like,
rugs for months. But
"Do you guys see it?"
But she just rocked. The old lady's gonna love
She's
this.
gonna love it. So and just, but I just love that thought of them like coming and taking that and
Taking her
just
out,
like walking
like,
out.
"See
And
you
she's just
later."
like, "That's not for you."
You're like, what are you doing?
And
I
then
love that her thought is, I'm gonna be friends with this.
I
Yeah.
know.
Like,
Well,
I
you
would be like,
No,
I'm moving.
I
Yeah.
would be like, I'm putting out a camera. I'm
Yeah,
gonna be
or
rich.
that too, yeah.
Okay. So, but this was discovered because it was this lady had passed away and her kids came and were going through her stuff, and this was all spelled out in her journal.
Oh wow.
Crazy.
Oh my gosh.
And she never told anyone about it, so she tells it in the journal. And then they were reading through. She started like testing out little recipes for them, different stuff for them to try. And she actually developed a bundt cake recipe that ended up being like their favorite kind.
Oh
and
my
and I just
gosh.
love that image of like a Bigfoot loving a bundt cake because it fit its thumb right in the
Yeah,
hole and just like
right.
eat it like a donut.
This is the best.
The best.
Also baking.
How do they know if they liked it or didn't like it though?
Like they would
Like
like
they're
give it back. They
perfecting
just
it.
wouldn't eat it.
There's like one bite out of it.
One bite, they're like, no. No rock for you today.
No rock for you. And
I want my pine cones back.
I know. It's like, I want 2 rugs.
Yeah, give me 2 rugs. And the good ones. I know you're keeping them in there.
I know you're giving us the crappy ones. We've been
We
watching
literally
you.
watch you all day.
We're right in the trees, right outside your house.
Yeah.
So she had a bundt cake recipe in
Oh my
her journal,
gosh.
and I gotta find that, and we gotta try it sometime.
Well, we
Probably
gotta
is
put it
nasty.
out.
Probably has like
Pine
sap in
I was
it.
gonna
Like
say,
Yeah, just put
the
that next to
perfected
it.
recipe.
Next
they love a
Bacon.
cracked raw egg on it,
Yeah.
like bacon,
And bacon. Are
bacon
they,
juice.
do they eat? Do we know what they?
Yeah,
Are they herbivores, carnivores?
There have been so many encounters of them like being seen carrying deer. They
Okay.
eat meat.
Oh,
They I think they're opportunists like a bear. They'll
Yeah.
eat whatever.
Yeah,
Bugs,
it's
like bugs, roots, whatever.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
but yeah, every experience is kind of like suggested they're opportunistic eaters. Now, you'd have to be to support, that kind of like
Transient lifestyle.
or and they're like mass, like it's such a big animal. Like that's why
Yeah.
bear tend to do it where I don't know. Anyway, so there's even a guy like this is more like the guy who like no, it's not scary, kind of like mystic side where he had like a telepathic connection.
right.
Sometimes people do encounter that where they'll get a feeling or impression like it's saying, "Hey, you're safe." Or I'm not going to do anything to you, or get out. Like these very strong things. In fact, someone even said like, I'm going to try talking to them. And this is actually Survivor Man.
Oh, I
Les
love
Stroud.
Survivor. Yeah.
He's said that he made a, and this was on Sasquatch Chronicles, is called their podcast, Sasquatch Chronicles podcast. But Les Stroud was on there and he explained that the episode was of him and he was in the woods and he was kind of taunting fate, like trying to encounter Sasquatch because they were doing a Survivor Man Bigfoot edition. Oh, wow. And he was out there and he was just like walking around and he just stopped and got a chill down his back, which is very common. We seem to know.
Yeah.
And then and he said that I was like, what's that? And then that's all the TV show. The show, that's all it depicted is him saying like, what's that? Oh, okay, I guess we're good. But he's like, that's not what happened. In real life, I stopped and I was like, what is this? And he said he felt a thought in his head, at the back of his, like at the core of his mind. Like not like our thoughts tend to be up in the frontal lobes, like our consciousness awareness is right here for whatever reason. But he said he felt like a voice, like at the base, like of his brain, like around like the hippocampus, I guess. But, and it said, if you want to see us, stay here tonight. And he said he's perceived 2 behind him, an older one and a younger one. And he said, I'm not ready. And they said, okay. And they walked away and they left. And then that's when they picked up filming again.
Oh my
Whoa.
gosh.
Now, a lot of people say stuff like
I'm
that.
not
And he said,
ready.
I'm not ready. So
You're on Bigfoot edition.
Yes,
You better be ready.
be ready for all of us, man.
This is why we've never seen it.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because he wasn't recording. He's like, I'm not ready. They thought like it was like a.
I'm not ready. Let me just pull out my camera. And then they're gone.
They're
He's
like,
wait, what?
dang
I'm
it.
ready now.
It's like must mean something. We don't have technology. They're like, no, he's not prepared.
He's not
And it's just
prepared.
like, no, I mean, I'm ready now.
I'm ready now.
So
Now
he
it's
says,
going.
he says every time he goes out in the woods, he'll like send out like a sonar thing, like, hey, if you're out here, maybe I'll like encounter you, or you can, do some tree knocks or something. And he said most of the time he doesn't. One time he said that he sent that out and he's like, hey, I'm going to be hiking and camping out around here a couple of days. If you guys are around, I'd like to see you. And he said he got one of the only times he got a response back, and he like same thing
Yeah.
like it. And they said we're sleeping. We're sleeping.
Can you imagine?
Can you think quieter, please? I'm trying to sleep.
It's like, I'm ready for you. And they're like, oh my gosh, we're sleeping. Like, jeez.
Oh my gosh. When I listened to that, I died. I was like, you gotta be kidding.
We're sleeping.
We're sleeping. But when he told that story, he didn't laugh, and the
hilarious.
host of the podcast didn't laugh, and I was just like dying on
How
that.
is hilarious. We're
sleeping.
sleeping.
But anyway,
We're
so
sleeping.
Sorry.
yeah, so very
Maybe they're
interesting.
asleep.
I don't ever want to invite, like external beings or something like except
Aliens
allowing
or
them to
anything,
and
yeah.
talk in my mind. I don't really like that.
No.
But
I feel like I gotta try it.
you can try it.
I'm serious. I think
You
I'm gonna make a
can.
bundt cake. I'm going in the woods.
A bump
I-
cake. They're like, we don't know what that is.
Sorry, did you not hear that story about that grandma lady? She said it was a recipe for you guys. Oh,
But yeah, anyway, very strange. Something I want to you talk about this and okay, so if you could redo this number, what would you change? You were a 6, you were an 8, would you go up or down? I mean, it sounds a lot of times you're ridiculed for saying, no, it sounds more, and I'm not trying, I didn't make this as a with the purpose of convincing you or anyone or myself, because I'm like, there's something. We don't know, but there's something. But there's so many things. Do you think this changes? Like, you don't have to give a number, but do you think it changes how you, perceive it?
For me, it definitely does. I mean, I feel like I have more information, which is half.
Consistencies make a big difference,
Yes,
too.
Yeah.
exactly. And I think that's a big deal. Also, kind of maybe the reasoning where it's like, well, I've heard this, but then it's like, well, the reason why we think they do this is because of this. I feel like that changes a lot, like the draping and the everything
Yeah.
else.
The sounds.
The sounds. It's like,
Oh.
okay, well, yeah, that actually does make sense. And hearing those encounters, you're like, well, I don't know. There's so many things that you could do as a hoax
Yeah.
that would be, I guess, that you could make so much more evidence. So it doesn't seem likely that it's a big hoax or a big conspiracy where people are trying to trick other people. I just don't feel
Yeah.
like that's it would just be, you could choose something easier, basically. It's
Yes.
like there's something that you
Yeah.
could way more fake prove, but so I think I'm more of like that there's more truth to it than there's not.
I think so. I think that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
Chloe?
I mean, I think it's similar because I have a lot of that information. I think if anything, I'm like, it's pretty freaky.
Yeah.
Like-
No, it's
Like if
terrifying.
I heard those sounds, if I
The
heard
sounds,
a voice,
the double
like
jointed,
anything,
the red
like
eyes.
that would.
I'm not
freak
ready.
me
I'm not
out.
ready.
I just next time I'm making it the whole time. I am not ready.
And
Yeah,
no, don't be
you have a
I am
mantra.
not ready.
I'm gonna sneak a bundt cake in your backpack, and you will have no choice whatsoever. I'll be hiking behind you, and I'll be like, "She's ready. She's ready." I'll slowly get further and further.
You
She's
like put
ready.
instead of like a sign that says like kick me on the back, it's just like tap my shoulder. I'm ready. I'm
One,
ready.
2, I'm ready.
1, 2. So
I know the pacing.
yeah, it's really interesting. I think when you look at this, and I have to be careful because, I mean, this has taken a while for me to lay this
Yeah.
out for you guys.
Yeah.
And you don't have this time with everyone you encounter.
True.
I've brought up this scenario, and I've even expressed my skepticism towards this subject to different people, and they'll still I get Christmas presents of a Sasquatch ornament or a sticker, and I'm like, is this friendly, or they're just here, let's give this an
I'm
8.
poking fun at you.
People give me bundt cakes all the time.
I don't even know.
No,
It's
it's
the
like-
wrong recipe.
It's a wrong recipe. I hate it.
You never
get it right.
There's no pine cones in there.
No pine cone. So, anyway, so there's that element where it's people, I don't know, you have to be a little careful with that. But if you have the time to really break down this stuff and say, hey, people are really seeing all these things, you wonder why we don't know more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that leads to, go ahead.
Well,
Right.
and I think half of it is you can lay out facts for anything, but I feel like when you're talking to somebody that you trust or obviously
Yeah.
has a lot of passion, I feel like there's a lot more actually I do think that this could be, true.
Yeah.
And it's also people who have encounters, they don't know all this backstory.
Yeah.
They just
Yeah.
experience
Yeah,
something they say, and you're like, oh, you got 7 out of the 9
Nine.
most common things. So, yeah, anyway. So very interesting. Now, anytime someone gets physical evidence or even a physical injury, some proof that
Yeah.
this happened, there seems to always be government intervention.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Getting into the government now.
Yeah. Well,
Real
so-
conspiracy theories.
Now, like seriously, like there are people
Yeah.
who call the police and report, and then they'll notice police cars passing their house, just checking up on them. It's like, why? It's so strange. Like there's just some, but there is something that even more strange that happens to people who get really, really good evidence, like a blood sample or video footage that's just like, like off the charts accurate. Something that when someone gets like this like really great physical evidence, there is this series of events that always seems to play out. And not even recently, like 50 years ago, the exact same thing would happen with intervention from the government. But essentially this is how it plays out. And I could give you like stories, but pretty much this is what happens. A very much law enforcement fed suit aviators, like classic fed person shows up with someone who looks like the brawny man, like lumberjack, straight up beard, flannel, very woodsy kind of person. They show up together. The agent or the FBI person asks the person to tell their story, and then at some point, and then like the lumberjack person kind of tells them, "Hey, you're crazy. Don't tell anyone about this," and almost like threatens them, "Don't tell anyone that this happened." And it's like that pattern happens all the time. It is so interesting. And it's like, well, so what's going on? And I've heard some people say that there is a government arm that deals with strange cases like this, but then they hire contractors to be a part of this.
Yeah.
So that they can deflect blame if it gets all brought up in the open and be like, oh yeah, that was our consultant told. I don't know how that would play, but I've heard people say that. But it's so strange that people are like, yeah, after this happened, I tried telling the police, and then all of a sudden like a Fed shows up with a lumberjack. It's like, and like 50 years ago, you'll read like I'll go. So I went to the University of Utah, and they have this huge library, and I went there. It's like 7 layers of like library. It's a huge library, the Marriott Library, and I went and looked up. I remember I walked through. I had to go so far down to the library. I had to like wheel the columns, like because they're like collapsed, and like wheel them to get to it. And I was like, there's like this really specific Sasquatch book that I looked up. I was trying to find. And it was like between like 2 satanic books. I'm just like, this is like the forbidden section of like the restriction section.
Utah
I was expecting to open it and a Sasquatch would be like, hey, like,
This is where we've been hiding.
yeah, seriously, you see Sasquatch down there.
It's like in Harry Potter when it's like he's like yelling.
Oh yeah, the book.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. No. I'm not ready.
Does an arm come out? I'm not ready.
So, anyway, but and you can read these old encounters, and essentially, it's like, my dad had this encounter. He got like, he shot like a finger off the thing, and had that, and then, like a federal agent, like a police officer with.
Lumberjack.
Yeah, lumberjack. Like they don't
Also,
say that, but
I mean, what's this private contractor that they're like, our uniform is flannel
Seriously.
and jeans, and you must have a beard and you must be jacked.
yeah, you got to be jacked because you're gonna threaten people.
Neanderthal. You gotta be a Neanderthal. You gotta be.
They do a DNA test before.
I just took a DNA test.
Gosh, that's so funny, but yeah. I'm thinking of like all the movies of like vampire hunters are like half vampire, like they have a Sasquatch hunter who's half Sasquatch.
That's what I was gonna say. It sounded like that they've just shaved him down,
Yeah,
and he's just like a little bit more intelligent.
Keep
and
the beard.
Keep the beard.
Yeah, you can keep the beard, but everything else has to go. Getting waxed every 2 days. Poor guy.
Dang it.
And I mean, how long do these things live? Maybe they're like live super long. It's the same Sasquatch man.
Yeah. So, there was a man who claimed to have like a connection with a Sasquatch family that lived in his area, and he would go there and kind of do this mind speak. He would introduce his family and say, "This is my wife. I love her very much." And it's like he's giving like outline of how to deal with them, and usually it's like, don't use complicated words, use things very directly. They understand that more clearly. They have their own spoken language, but it's too fast and like gibbery for us to ever learn or understand. He needs to watch Arrival. We need
that girl to come out and help.
Yeah. She's like, how many were there? He's like, how did you know that? Anyway, but he said that some of them have this eye glow they've said, hey, some of us have this eye glow. We don't know why or how, but if they're scared or angry, it's red. And then as they calm down, it goes into more of like a white or a blue tone.
Oh, okay.
So, and he kind of explained a lot of these mysteries of like what he thinks. And this is one person who claims to go out with his family and explain like, this is my dog. Don't kill the dog. Like to the Sasquatch family.
Yeah, this is
Friendly.
And yeah, anyway, so it's very interesting overall. You know, there's much more to be discovered, but essentially this is the Bigfoot scenario that we are dealing with. This is what we have on the table.
It's a lot. There's a lot
Yeah.
to digest, honestly. And a lot of information to be shared.
Yeah,
You know?
totally. And okay, another big thing I never mentioned is they slap the side of buildings or RVs.
Like a teenage boy at school.
Yes. Yeah, no, exactly. And some people like,
the door frame.
oh yeah, like,
That's what I think of.
and yeah, or just like people sleep in cabins, they just hear boom off the side, and it's like maybe they're just trying to get a reaction. Maybe, gosh, there was one where that kept happening in the cabin, a story, and they're like, that was weird, and then they're like, are you cold? And they walked around and the front door was open.
Oh, yikes.
Yeah, and they were like, yeah, and so they left because they kept getting harassed by these Sasquatch. I don't think any of them went in, but they kept like opening the door and stuff.
Oh my gosh, no.
Probably some teenage ones.
Yeah, seriously.
Always
So,
the
how close
troublemakers.
you get
adolescents.
How close are you getting? I'll open the door. No.
They're freaking out in there. Do it again. Yeah.
Pin the tail on the honky.
Yeah.
Just kidding. Just kidding. I'm just kidding. Anyway, so yeah, it's really interesting. We're gonna wrap things up. That is, yeah, that's what we're dealing with. Thanks for sitting through this, you guys.
Well,
Chloe,
thanks
thank
for
you,
thanks for
Gwen.
having us,
Yes,
Henry.
yeah.
That was good. Cleo,
So-
great to meet you.
Gwen,
See you again.
you too.
Yeah.
All right, this is a brand new podcast, clearly. So anything you do, if you want to support, that will be greatly appreciated. And stick around for more Modern Day Mysteries.